Welcome to EritreaNEXT's weekly roundup of developments in the news that affect Eritrea and the larger Horn of Africa. So for this week, we will take a look at Somalia's and Egypt's most recent partnership about the deal they made for Red Sea port expansion, the African Union and the Russian press release, that joint press release that they issued as part of the Russia's foreign minister tour of Africa, Ethiopia's most recent statement regarding the Pretoria Agreement and what it is saying now, and an interesting news about how the African Union is actually creating frameworks for the African diaspora to directly vote in elections within their respective countries. Quite interesting. And encouraging news about the date palm production in Eritrea, its current status, and what the Ministry of Agriculture is saying. And also related to that, the graduation season, the graduation in Eritrea, but taking a little closer look at what does it mean, what is the trend, and what is the prospect for the future. So as always, instead of just narrating what just happened, we will focus on what are the key takeaways for each. What does it really mean? What does it mean for economic development? What does it mean for regional peace? And overall, the prospect of development for the future. So we will focus on that. Let's get started. Let's start with this headline from the Addis Standard. And the headline reads, Somalia approves maritime cooperation deal with Egypt as Cairo expands Red Sea port partnership after Eritrea pact. What they are implying is that Eritrea's pact with Egypt now expands to Somalia. And of course, as we all know, Egypt has very good relations with Somalia and Eritrea. And as part of their agreement on Red Sea maritime security, that it belongs to the littoral countries. This is also part of that. And of course, this is what Ethiopia has been complaining about for a long time. But also, it's also on its own making, because especially during the last 3 years, as Abiy Ahmed starts making claims and about trying to get to the sea by hook or crook, including ways that affect the sovereignty of Eritrea, the sovereignty of Somalia. This is related to that as well, as we all know. That explains the tone of the headline. But what does it really mean? What is the takeaway that I was referring to? What are the key implications? So let's take a quick look at a few things. Starting with, Egypt is definitely deepening its Red Sea role. It has already started deploying troops as part of their agreement and also as part of the African Union's stabilization framework. So not only with Eritrea and its security agreement, it's a partnership that's been going on for many years, by expanding it to Somalia, what Egypt is basically doing is from the Suez Canal to the Bab el-Mandeb, it is definitely getting expanding its role, economic role, military role, and I think that is part of that. And also, in this, especially in this statement that they issued, or what the Somalian cabinet just approved, is building a strategic port network. So for Egypt, it already indicated that it will get involved in Eritrean ports, Port of Assab, and maybe that also includes Port of Massawa, and now, by extension, Somali's ports as well. And then, by directly or indirectly, because this is kind of a tripartite alliance of Egypt, Somalia, and Eritrea, through this agreement, this also means the relationship between Eritrea and Somalia also gets stronger. And at the end of the day, it's every country, it's doing its own thing. It's ensuring its national security interest. So is Egypt. and in particular, especially the way they stated, it's countering regional rivals, as they call it. I think that's another way of saying Ethiopia, but also other countries as well. It's the whole region, starting from Israel to Turkey to other superpowers. It's definitely something that everyone tries to influence as far as security and access and network is concerned. So now, particularly to Ethiopia, and it's all this ambitious statements that's coming from Ethiopia. I think that's also part of the trigger here. It is definitely to counter what Ethiopia and its ambitions that may affect Somalia and Eritrea sovereignty. Moving on to the next item, which is the joint press release was issued after the Foreign Minister Lavrov, Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov, in a tour of Africa, and that includes Ethiopia, Burundi, and I think Niger and Mozambique. Not exactly why those 4 countries were selected at this time, but the joint statement with the African Union focuses on kind of an overall agreement that could affect other countries in a positive way. And let's take a look at those, even though, well, his visit was to Addis Ababa, because that's where the African Union is. And I think that also, in particular, includes Ethiopia as well. So this joint statement of the African Union and the Russian Federation, as is posted on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. And those are, in my view, the key implications are, first of all, there is a promise that it opens Russian markets for African countries. Hopefully that means something new, something more expanded. But I think coming October or maybe November, the Africa-Russia summit once again will take place. And the foreign minister's visit also is kind of as part of that, and it is mentioned. And maybe they will make specific announcements, but opening Russian markets for African countries, that's actually good news for all. And also they mention infrastructure financing, pretty much like what China is doing. To what extent can they actually do it given their current situation? To be seen, but it is mentioned that they are willing to finance infrastructure projects, and they already do in a few countries, but he is actually mentioning expanding that. And kind of related to that is also debt financing, as these countries, or many countries, including Ethiopia, try to structure their debt. Russia is offering its resources. Very interesting, especially after what's going on in Russia, and it's still embroiled in the Ukraine war. But the joint statement basically indicates that Russia is willing to do this, and I guess we have to see what the details will be in the coming months, especially after the November summit. And also offers food security, which is another way of saying food aid, which especially countries like Ethiopia and some countries who struggle with that could actually benefit from, including Sudan, war-affected areas, Somalia, the entire region. And here is the interesting headline from the African Union. It's about the framework that it's working on for getting its African diaspora, the African immigrants who live everywhere throughout the world, to get them involved in their respective countries, to be specific, in the election or national elections of their respective countries. Now, as a union that's been working on to unite Africa, this totally makes sense, but let's take a look at what they are aiming at, right? Or what the at least short-term implication will be if they keep encouraging that. One is the diaspora investment. All countries separately, and the African Union as a union is definitely interested in encouraging Africans to be more involved in investing in Africa, to reverse that brain drain, but at the same time to bring capital back as well. So it's part of that framework. if they are directly involved in their respective countries, and actually they can vote, of course the probability of investment increases as well. Um, and also to create what they call some kind of digital identity in this day and age, uh, where there are estimated numbers and people are spread all over. But to actually have to make it easy for governments to know exactly um, about their immigrant or diaspora population throughout the world. So this could go a long way, because for each country to do it separately is actually quite complex. So if the African Union can actually manage to create some kind of framework for the governments to do that through a digital ID, it could definitely be helpful. If that is achieved, actually this could involve GovTech markets, so all these markets that actually help governments govern better by providing them systems, especially nowadays, AI-related and other governance systems. So for industries that are involved in that, if this framework is actually established, it goes more than just getting involved in investments and voting, but a huge implication there as well. And more importantly, it's about the diaspora involvement, the diaspora engagement. Everybody is actually seeing and reaping the benefit of encouraging their diaspora to engage more, to invest more, to reverse that brain drain. So I think over the coming years, this will be definitely something to look at. Let's move on to the next item, and that is, as the headline of FANA says here, Prime Minister Abiy says the Pretoria Agreement remains a major chapter in Ethiopia's peace efforts, which is another way of saying that Ethiopia is committed to the Pretoria Agreement. But interestingly, it's actually the federal government of Ethiopia is the one that actually is not pushing or failing to implement the Pretoria Agreement overall, because some of it by choice and some of it because it can't. So what are they really saying? Of course, they are, I think, sending a signal to the rest of the world to say that they are committed to peace, which is a good thing. So what does it really mean? Or what are the key points? Let's take a look at a few. One, that the Pretoria Agreement remains the Ethiopian government's official policy. And I think that's good, because without that, the probability of conflict basically increases. And secondly, it is that the recognition that peace is a prerequisite to economic development. So if you want construction, if you want reconstruction, you got to have peace. So, and at least verbally, everybody is issuing statements that they are for peace, they are against war. So if this reinforces that, I think that's a good thing. But if the message is that economic development and creating jobs is what actually makes people's lives better, so far, the Ethiopian government has been sending this conflicting messages. One, something that sounds like it's encouraging conflict with neighbors and even within Ethiopian regions and their civil war. On the other hand, it's saying that it's committed to something like this. So trying to reinstate that, I think maybe hopefully reinforces the peace part of this. And at the same time, when others are also talking about peace, about not going back to the old days, Ethiopia is also looking at those kind of alliances suspiciously. Moving on, I think overall, what does this mean is what we are talking about. What it means is that at this time, at least, conflict will be less likely, because once you abandon a framework for peace, the conflict becomes more likely. Now, the key is implementation. Statements, empty promises don't really matter. And after so many years, we shouldn't be talking about the Pretoria Agreement as an agreement for peace. It actually should have been implemented and done, but it tells us structurally the federal government, the central government, even if it wishes so, it can't demobilize victims as even if it wants to, because it can't reach them. There's less access, but more importantly, there is no political will to solve that. So everything will be judged by its implementation. The success of this is not going to be another statement a few months from now, where the Ethiopian government once again says that it reinstates its commitment to Pretoria Agreement, but the reality is, for the victims, for the reality on the ground, is that it hasn't made much progress. In fact, politically speaking, the situation in some areas, especially its relations with the TPLF, is getting worse. Moving on, different news, encouraging news coming from the Eritrea's Ministry of Agriculture, and that is something to do with the news item has something about the details of the date palm production and its potential for the future, which is worth mentioning a few items. As the headline reads, that date palm production in Eritrea, its current status and its way forward. So what does it really mean? I think we every once in a while we all see headlines like this and we say, okay, nice, but what does it really mean? Here are a few that I gathered. This goes beyond the potential for commercial palm, which is exporting dates and what have you. But the area of Eritrea that is being targeted is also being affected by desertification. So this goes a long way in combating and reversing that, according to the ministry. And also, by creating jobs and improving local lives, this has great potential. Eritrea, it actually is ideally situated, especially for this particular industry that has great demand in the Middle East and Northern Africa, and even beyond that. The country could be poised to be a major exporter of this, which is actually it grows naturally in the area, but at least according to the statement, it has a great potential. And of course, reducing imports. Yes, they grow locally, but at this time, I think a large portion is still being imported, so it would be great to reverse that. And the target now is that to plant 1 million trees by 2030. The next 5 years, 1 million trees. I think the current number is, if I'm not mistaken, maybe around 300,000, 400,000. So this is quite an ambitious mission, but very encouraging for the ministry to be working on that, and I'm sure they can do it. It's graduation season, so as always, we've been seeing news items coming from the Ministry of Information regarding students graduating from technical schools and colleges all over Eritrea. And in this particular one, I want to mention a little bit or delve into what the College of Business and Social Science graduation says about the trend and where it's been, what the prospect for the future is, so that we can zoom out and actually notice progress. So, in terms of numbers, so far in almost 20 years or 19 years since the inception of the college, over 14,000 students have graduated, large number. And in particular for this year, a little over 1,000 graduates, and almost half of them, 47% of them, are women. That is very encouraging. That means also you can't get this by not getting started in kindergarten and pre-kindergarten and getting families to actually send their girls to school equally as the number of boys. So the trend overall has been actually very encouraging in terms of the female involvement in overall in education, but to see them graduate as equal as their peers, that's very encouraging. I don't know if this is just for this particular college, but I'm assuming the rest of the colleges will have similar numbers as well. But overall, speaking of what is the key implication of education, it is to expand the workforce, the number of people who are available to develop the country. And that's been the greatest challenge. Of course, immigration, students, lack of jobs, and students or young people living for better opportunities is a great challenge. But at least we can't ignore the fact that in the last 20 years, in this particular college, over 14,000 students have graduated, and a lot of effort and result has been bearing in terms of getting young ladies, women to be involved, and it is bearing fruit. And better workforce also means better public administration, better institutions. So I hope we continue to examine numbers like this instead of just taken at face value, but looking at measurable numbers. And of course, these numbers tell us something. Also, some people may be able to dig deeper and even tell us the bigger story. But I think the numbers are encouraging overall. That concludes this week's roundup. I hope you find it helpful. The headlines may change from week to week, but the question remains the same. Which one of those headlines actually deserve our attention more? Which ones are likely to have more impact on economic development and regional peace, and what have you? So we'll monitor them together, but for today, thank you for watching. And as always, if you find this helpful, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. And I actually read all your comments, and they shape what I will be talking about next. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.
اسكت الشمع كبد عدي عدي رأي خلاني أنس رأي خلاني الرأي رأي خلاني صباح طيكم تخوني